Welcome back to Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm Dear Darling. Should we see what's going on our lovely island of Fawnhallow today, where we'll be relaxing as per usual. I'm recording, it's actually a bit of a tight window right now because I'm recording kind of before the the D&D session I have, but it's mostly a combat session and the things which I have were already kind of prepared last time as well, so it's not too big a deal unless they absolutely breeze through everything. But this is more of like a transitionary episode of a D&D session. So hello everyone, right now in Fawnhallow at 6:41 p.m. on Wednesday, January 15th, 2025. I don't want to say one thing which is definitely happening is fighting some manticores, 4 manticores, for a level 4 party. Is that too difficult? Well, to be fair, my players also skew on my strong side and I don't do as much combat, so the combats tend to be less frequent, but tougher. I think they should be fine. I honestly actually think they might breeze through it. But there are some other random events which are waiting, which can happen, or have been preordained to happen. But how exactly they'll transpire kind of depends how the session goes, so that's why it's a little bit more ambiguous, and I don't want to say what yet because I don't know how far through they go. Combat can take a while. I don't think it will take the entire session though. I think what's more likely is it will take a bit. It will take like an whatchamacallit. I forgot what I was gonna say. It might take up like half a session or two hours of a session. A thing I do actually need to think about as well is the fact that there is, very obvious hinting that there is going to be like a joint session at some point, because I was like, I've got the 2 campaigns, why not give them a moment to be able to sort of like reconvene or whatever, just for like funsies really. But that's not yet come to transpire, yet to pass. Because I also will need to organise it, because what I'm trying to do is like, it's a difficult balance of like, I'm only going to do it like when they're kind of synced up, or like more or less vaguely synced up. The issue with that is like, because they're at different times in the campaign, they're on the same day at very least. I think one group is, I can't remember quite off the top of my head, but I believe that one group is like at midday of that day and the other group is just a few hours ahead, so it's not actually too differently unsynced from each other. And the thing that will happen will either be, I've given myself some room to say like when it can happen, because obviously if this was just one campaign it'd be easy. I would just say it would be at this time and then they'll know. But because this is something which requires a syncing up between 2 different campaigns, I've given myself a bit of ambiguous room. In universe it wouldn't be that ambiguous, but you kind of have to do it on a meta level, otherwise it's not going to work. No, to be completely fair to myself, it's c'est un difficile problem. But yeah, what are we going to talk about today? Great question. Don't have an answer. Let's think about something. I did finish watching the first episode of Squid Games, season 2. I thought it was very intense. I thought it was great. They're not well, actually, I guess I will not spoil it yet in case you've not seen it. But what can I spoil? Because I'll give my overall thoughts, I think, after the entire thing. But I guess if you don't want any spoilers whatsoever, you should probably stop watching, because I'm going to bring up something that happens in the first episode. I will give no context for it whatsoever. But it's basically, if you want very mild spoilers, it's the rules to a game which appears. And it's, yeah. I don't know, maybe if you've seen them teasers, but if you don't want any Squid Game Season 2 spoilers, this happens in the first episode, so be warned, I'm going to talk about it. Oh, wait, but I'll probably title the episode something to do with it. Yeah, I've kind of put myself in a loop here, because it only makes sense to title the episode this, and if it doesn't, Okay, I mean, we can title it something else, I guess. Because, really, well, I don't know, first 4 minutes. Okay, whatever. I don't know. I'll figure it out when I get there. I apologise if I spoiled anything, but I'm giving no context for it whatsoever. But essentially, the rules are rock, paper, scissors. -1 are said. And I'm just going to tell you about it, like, strip away the script game. Let's talk about the game rock, paper, scissors -1. Because it got me thinking. I'm very mathematically, well, not very mathematically minded, more like I have a maths degree, and I did a decent amount of like probability and game theory sort of things. But it got me thinking about it when I heard the rules. But essentially how you play it, it's like regular rock, paper, scissors, but instead of rock, paper, scissors, instead of throwing out one hand gesture, you throw out 2 hand gestures, and then there's another countdown where you say -1. And when that happens, you take away one of your hands to leave whatever hand is left. And then the rock, paper, scissors is decided by the hands which are left. And I was like, oh, that's cool, because that's an interesting twist on rock, paper, scissors. Right? Well, at least my initial reaction was like, that's an interesting twist on rock, paper, scissors. A very simple game, which is easy to understand, but gives it like an extra layer of agency or strategy to it. And apparently it's a very common, like, Korean, like, sort of playground game. It's like not outrageously weird, but like me in UK, I've never heard of it before, and I was like, that's pretty cool. And it got me thinking, my mathematical mind, my game theory mind going, being like, what is the optimal strategy for this game? How does this game work? So, you know, I already thought this through, like, so I'm not going to break it down for you that much, because, well, I'm not, this is not me working it out live. I just want to tell you, I already thought this through. I've like mulled it over while I went to sleep, as I do most things. But the most immediate thing is rock, paper, scissors is like a cyclical game. I think at the time, I can't remember, where basically it's all cyclically symmetrical. Is that what it's called? Like, it's an abelian group with order 3, kind of. Well, I guess it's not an abelian group because the relationship between the two is not, between everything's not transitive, but okay, whatever. And it's not also strictly ordered. Okay, it's not a group. Wait, does a group have to be ordered? I can't remember. Anyway, but the whole point is rock beats paper beats scissors. Paper beats rock beats scissors beats paper, and it does it all in a circle, such that each of rock, paper, scissors, the symbols themselves, the gestures you throw, are fundamentally equivalent to each other. There's not one which is strictly better. It's not like rock beats 2 of them and paper always loses. One always beats the other and loses to the other one, and there's no incentive to throw one over the other except for random chance. Is basically what I mean. Which essentially means that you no longer need to think about the game in the strict structure of throwing rock, paper, scissors. Instead, all you need to think about is the sort of hierarchy between them, or like the relationships between them. That's how they're defined. Because otherwise, if you think about what's the optimal strategy for rock, paper, scissors -1, is the fact that you would need to map out all the possibilities, and that would be, you know, you could throw out rock, paper, rock, scissors, paper, etc., which gives 9 possibilities. And then the way that you normally calculate strategies and that sort of thing is you would make a matrix out of the 9 all the possibilities you have, and then all the possibilities your opponent has, and then you just try and figure out exactly what the weightings are of like winning each round and losing each round is for each one. But immediately you can rule out a lot of the strategies, because fundamentally it's all the same. You know, the dynamic of throwing rock, paper, if you end up with rock, let's say rock versus rock, paper, that's exactly the same as scissors versus scissors, rock, or paper versus paper, scissors, right? Because the same dynamics is at work here. The important part is your opponent has one thing which will draw with your hand, both your hands, and then the other thing which will definitely win against both your hands. So that reduces everything by a third, as you can now substitute with like A, B, C, essentially, where A beats B, B beats C, C beats A, which I think is quite nice, if anything. And there's also another thing which is immediately apparent, is the fact that it is a terrible, terrible idea in rock, paper, scissors -1 to throw out 2 of the same gesture. You intuitively, I think that makes sense as well. You can just like immediately see it, right? Why, if you wanted to, for example, end up with rock, no matter what, why would you bother throwing out 2 rocks? Because then you have no choice. You are forced into like taking one hand away and the other has to be rock. But if you at least throw out rock and scissors, you can at least trick your opponent into thinking that you might throw scissors. And yeah, and I guess a bit of an obvious like counterexample as well is like, if you imagine that your opponent throwed rock, you can just quickly think through your scenarios. If you have rock, scissors, you can always throw rock. You know you're guaranteed to not lose. If you have paper, scissors, or paper, rock, you can throw out paper and you are guaranteed to win, because they don't have a choice. So immediately you can say that in game theory you call it a weakly dominated or is it strongly dominant? I think it's weakly dominated. I forget exactly the definitions exactly between the two. Strongly dominated means it's like strictly better no matter what, but weakly dominated means that there is no incentive to do it or something like that, intuitively. Is that right? Let's see. Strongly dominated versus weakly dominated game theory. Strictly dominant always provides greater utility. Weakly dominant, yeah, a weakly dominant strategy that provides at least the same utility for all of the other player strategies. Oh yeah, okay, wait, so strictly dominant is always strictly greater, while weakly dominant is it's greater or equal then, or something like that. So dominated in this case by the fact that the best you will ever do is tie in the strategy. I guess that makes sense, right? Maybe. Anyway, doesn't matter. The finesse to details, we're working with theoreticals. So really, you only need to look at the case where you both have two different symbols thrown, and then you just need to think about the relationship between them. And luckily, because this game is identically symmetrical, you only need to think about it in one direction. So in every case, because of a pigeonhole principle, there's only 3 symbols, 4 hands. One of the symbols must be shared. So let's, for example, say it's rock. And then we have paper and scissors, and it doesn't matter which way around we distribute paper and scissors between each of the players. It's the same sort of strategy which will be employed by the player, just flipped on the other side. Because if I have rock, scissors, and you have rock, paper, and I have rock, paper, and you have rock, scissors, we have the same strategy will arise. It's just I will play one strategy, and you will play the other strategy, and we'll flip it around in the other case. So we only really need to look at one scenario. So really, that's why I was like, at first I was like, what a cool game. But then I was like, oh, you only boil it down to one scenario, basically, every time. So you can actually think of it intuitively as well. If I have rock, paper, and you have rock, scissors, without loss of generality, as we established before, it's a cyclical game, you can immediately see that you can throw... What am I saying? If I chose rock... No, you can immediately see, that's the way to put it. I can always choose rock, and I will always, at worst, tie. Right? So if I throw rock, then you... No matter if you throw rock or if you throw scissors, I will, at worst, tie. Which makes it... If the goal is to not lose, it makes it basically kind of like strongly dominant in that case. But the goal of this game is obviously to win, not just tie. So normally what you do is you would assign like values of like how much, well actually you draw like a little Punnett square if you know this from biology, but a 2x2 matrices to sort of write out exactly the value gain from each of them. So if I throw rock, if you throw rock, you will at worst, you will tie, so you get 0 value proposition. And then if you throw scissors, then you will get a -1 value proposition because you lose. That's it. Like, and you lost that game, and presumably you don't want to lose. You can also think about if I threw paper, then it's a bit different. If you throw rock, then you get the -1 value, but if you throw scissors, now you get the +1 value. So that means essentially that if you know that I'm going to throw rock, the worst you can do is tie, but if you know that I'm going to throw paper, you can now win or lose. And because it's not so strictly clear which one is better, because if you throw rock, you either tie against my rock or lose to my paper, or if you throw scissors, you either beat my paper or lose to my rock. You can intuitively kind of see that both symbols you throw have a way they can beat the other. You know, in one scenario, it's better to throw rock. Like, if I throw rock, it's better for you to throw rock. If I throw paper, it's better for you to throw scissors. That intuitively means that there's not an inherently dominant strategy, like a weakly dominant or strongly dominant strategy, because it means it's not the best in every scenario, right? So intuitively, you can already see that this is going to have what is called in game theory a mixed strategy, a mixed dominant strategy, I think it's called, where basically you need to sort of not alternate, but you need to sort of vary up how you throw your responses to actually get the highest expected value. Of course, expected value is more like if you played like the game 1,000 times, how many times would you expect to win? What proportion? But really, it's infinite times, but still. Play infinite games, what almost infinite, okay, really large finite number of games that trends towards infinity, what proportion do you expect to win? Because if you're only winning one game, then maybe you'd go for a different strategy. You might go for one which you're okay with tying or something. I don't know. That kind of depends on you. But we're looking at it from purposes of you're trying to win and you're trying to maximize the expected probability of you winning. So intuitively, it makes sense that you would have to change it up every now and then because there's not one which strictly beats the other. And the way you actually do that is now a bit more mathematical, where essentially this is a zero-sum game. My win means your loss means my win, our tie means we both tie. We can't both win, we can't both lose, essentially. It's zero-sum. One gain is the other's loss. So what you can do is you can think about probabilities of you throwing rock, in this case, compared to you throwing scissors. So let's say it's a probability P you throw rock and 1 minus P that you throw scissors. There are only two options, so they must add up to 1. And then you can do the expected calculation in both cases. If I throw rock, what do you expect to get? If you throw scissors, if I throw paper, what do you expect to get? So we can do that with rock would be 1 minus P. No, P plus 1, sorry, because it's minus 1 minus P, because you lose if you throw scissors. But in the case, I need to write this down. Wait, no, P plus 1 on one side of the equation. And then in the other case, if I throw paper, it'll be minus P, because you'll lose a rock, plus 1 minus P, because you'll win with scissors. That's expected value, because expectation is probability times the value you get. If you don't know that, that's just maths, I'm sorry. And long story short, that in this sort of zero-sum game, the way to maximize your odds of winning is to minimize my odds of winning. Imagine that P was a fixed value. Let's say it was like 50% or something. I am going to choose a strategy out of my rock and paper, which will give me the highest value out of the P minus 1 and whatever the other one was off the top of my head, which I can't remember. minus 1 minus 2P, right? I need to write this down. P minus 1 equals 1 minus 2P. Because these are the expected values that you would get. And for me to maximize it... So I guess technically, if P is fixed, these are the expected values that you would gain from doing your strategies. To maximize my value, I must minimize your value. So whatever value P you chose, presuming it's a fixed value, I will choose the two, whichever gives me the highest out of the two values. So the way to actually calculate P in this case is that it needs to be equal. To minimize my expected gain is you need to maximize your expected gain. In which case would meaning minimizing your expected loss, which would be making these equal. Because if they weren't equal, then I would just choose a strategy, which would mean you would lose the most. That's kind of like an intuitive reason why we make them equal to each other. But anyway, you do this, and then you can find out that P equals 2/3. So you can now figure out that P equals 2/3. And so if you are in the situation where you have the matching symbol, where the non-matching symbol in your hands, yours is the losing one, you should throw that 1/3 of the game. You should throw that using 1/3 of the games, and you should throw the matching symbol in 2/3 of the games. That's the optimal expected strategy for this sort of game. And you can flip it on the head as well to figure out that it's very similar for mine, that if you have the dominant strategy, you should throw the tie, I believe it's the same, 2/3 of the time, and then 1/3 of the time you would throw the other one. Does that make sense? I think that makes sense. And intuitively, it kind of makes sense that if you're in the winning position, you would want that in both positions, you would want to try and throw out the tie more often than not, because the person in the dominant hand is more likely to throw out the tie because they know they can't lose, and then the person with a weaker hand, actually I'm not sure if this is actually quite correct intuitively, but basically the long and short is you want to throw out the tied hand 2/3 of the time. And I believe we can do some quick maths just to think about if that makes sense the other way around as well. So what would be mine? Be P to throw out the rock. So presuming you throw out rock, then I'd have... No, it would be P... It would be 0, and then it would be 1 minus P. And then it would be P to throw out 1 minus P to throw out that would be P plus 1, no, P 1, P minus 1, And in the other case, I would win. Should be 1 minus p, right? And that gives minus p equals, what? Minus p? Minus p equals p equals 1. That's wrong. I did something wrong here. What have I done wrong here? It should probably be like a 1 minus 2p or something here. Hold on. It'd be 1 minus p, I throw out the dominant scissors. It'd be p minus 1, I lose, and then 1 minus p, I win. What? Oh, because it's not 1 minus p, it'd be p on this side, right? Because I win that round, that's why. Something's gone wrong here. Anyway, whatever. The D&D session is starting now, so I'm going to round this episode up here. But yeah, strictly dominant strategy. Very interesting, isn't it? Rock, paper, scissors, -1. But it's also not that interesting. But anyway, I hear about you. Let's quickly say, you're meant to play at like lightning fast speed, which is why it's like so difficult to think through the strategy as you're going. Anyway, if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been Dear Darling. Likes, comments, subscription, shares, greatly appreciated. Socials, Discord down below. Hope we see each other again. But for now, it's our farewell. So until next time, bye-bye for now.